would be cost neutral, because you could pay for that if you start knocking off these prefabricated buildings and stop throwing your money, dead money on those rents. But what we've done in the past, in the past 12 years or 15 years, we've become very over reliant on the multinationals A, but we got very reliant on the construction industry B. And now we have a workforce out there who, a lot of them worked in the construction industry, and they procured certain amount of skills from that industry. So those people need to be upskilled, because we're not going to have that kind of construction job figure again. And what we need to do is we need to upskill those people and get them into different lines of work. And what we've never really concentrated on is the small indigenous industry. You know, even from the cottage industry up. I visited an industry in Ballyhahill the other evening, and I just asked how many employees are employing. They said 28 full-time employees, and they have ancillary services outside of that. So I was reckoning somewhere between 40 and 50 people were benefiting from that very small industry. So we'll say that's what we need to look at, because a lot of them can be family orientated, a lot of them can be community orientated, and you find that they'll stay around longer than your large multinationals who will run to Asia or Eastern Europe at the drop of a hat.
Okay. Kevin, what do you feel on this as well? Isn't it good to get monies into infrastructure, roads, the schools, as Joe was saying, as John Sheehan was saying there as well, the small indigenous industries that we have locally, they're the foundation of future industry to keep employment going.
That's absolutely correct, John, and I agree with both my colleagues left and right. But the sad fact of the matter is that neither of these things are going to happen, which Mr. Walsh or Mr. Sheehan is implying. If the money was there, it may well be directed in those areas, but this is not what is going to happen. We're now facing the largest budgetary crisis the Irish Free State has ever known. We're trying to close a budget gap, a gap of 20 billions out of total spending of 54. That is not achievable. You cannot deflate your way back to growth. What is going to happen is that central funding to the County Council is going to be cut, as you say. There will not be money for any infrastructure projects. There will hardly be money to maintain the ones we have. This is why I chose to stand. I'm not willing to trot out the old political certainties and say that this is likely to happen or that is likely to happen. What's likely to happen is that we're likely to face more cuts, very possibly an interim budget again in September, before the final budget for the year in December. So I think we should concentrate on trying to stem the hemorrhaging of jobs from our system rather than talking about creating new ones. There are going to be no new jobs created in Ireland for at least 5 years. We must make every effort to stop the hemorrhage of jobs. And one thing I would like to do if I were to be lucky enough to get elected, I would like to encourage the council to lead by example, to examine their own services, the cost of procuring those services, both from a manpower point of view as well as material, and particularly to audit the way they spend their own money. The County Council cannot lead by words, we can lead by example. If the county councillors all over Limerick, both city and council, were to agree to a 10% reduction in their expenses as they were in the year 2008, that would set an example for every person in the county that people who rule us are willing to put their shoulder to the wheel as well. What we're hearing here tonight is sadly aspirational, and it's not going to happen. But I would challenge any prospective candidate running for the election, together with incumbents, to put before the people of Limerick a promise that next year, when the accounts are audited, their expenses will reflect a minimum of 10% decrease on their expenses for the year 2008. That would set a tremendous example. And I would also urge all listeners to support your local economy. If you have a room that needs painting, don't fear about spending the money. Go to your local painter. Ask him for a price. He'll give you a good price now. He's sitting idle. And paint your room. If you're thinking of getting your hair done, go do it. Spend a few pounds and concentrate your spending on services, not on goods. Because when you spend your money on goods, the only element of that remains in the Irish economy is the seller's profit, to which he is fully entitled. But if you spend your money on services, all of that money stays in the Irish economy, the local economy as well. Okay. So I would encourage all listeners, all people all over Limerick, to spend some money, do it wisely, judiciously, get the best price you can, and put money into the local economy. What we need is a resurgence of demand. Demand has completely collapsed.
Yes.
And this idea of infrastructure spending, by the autumn, the government will hardly have money for stamps.
Now, yeah, you see that's a fair point, and Joe, I just have to keep coming back to that as well. If we'll say the projects for infrastructure doesn't come to pass because of money problems, because of budgets, etc., as well, is there any other way that we can stem, as Kevin was saying there, the hemorrhage of jobs in West Limerick? Because every Indigenous, as John said there as well, industry is so important to the area. You're an employer still, and you run your own business. Is there any way within business like that we can create employment or keep people in jobs? What needs to be done?
Well, I'd still get back to the investment in infrastructure. I think we have the public-private partnership, and I think we have the CIC.
Yes.
The CIC,
You're all right.
the CIF actually are encouraging the government
Yes.
to invest money in infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is the way to go. And I think
Is that's the only practical way of doing it, is it?
I think so, because the construction has lost so many jobs. I mean, thousands of jobs have been lost in the construction. I think that's the only way to really get people back to work, because there have been so many construction jobs. And
Okay.
I still think that's the way to go.
Okay, we're going to take a quick. Okay, sorry, John.
Sorry,
Yes,
John.
come in on
No,
that. Yes, please. Yeah.
It's just interesting what Joe says in relation to the CIF, the Construction Federation, that part of the reason why we are where we are today
Yeah.
is you had three people complicit in the downfall of this. You had the government, you had the banks, and you had the developers. They ran amok with themselves, and they created a bubble, which it was evident from possibly 2006, early 2006, that this thing couldn't keep going at the rate it was going, but nobody shouted stop. And now we're in a mess of as to where we are, and we're into the black hole that Kevin spoke about, the deficit. Now, while he says we mightn't have money for stamps at the end of this, at the moment they're peeling revenue everywhere, every which way they can, and if they keep taxing people at the rate they're going to be taxing people between all the levies, you're going to drive people into the black economy, which happened way back in the 80s when you had high tax bands and that, So and that won't be good for anybody either. Now we have the pension reserve fund. All those things need to be looked at and released now, and we need to look to our partners in Europe to see if we can put a viable proposition to them that if they invest in Ireland now, that we will do our part and not go on the track record that has shown that we were inept in relation to how we managed the construction bubble.
If I could just
Right.
contribute
Yep.
one
Okay,
thing, John.
Kevin. Yes.
I don't want to portion blame for where we are now. That's an old political game, and that's exactly why I'm running. I don't want to play this game. I want to make a suggestion that's positive, rather than apportioning blame. We're all to blame. If Limerick County Council could designate an empty building in any town or all towns and devote that building to a childcare facility for the local people, it would give people who are perhaps offered a small wage per week, say some €100 a week, to do some work for a neighbour in a garden or to mind an elderly person in their home. A lady or a gentleman could do that if they could drop off their children to a little creche. It would release them from the burden of minding their children and earn some money. It would also get them out of the house. It would get them to meet people. There are buildings sitting vacant all over Limerick, both in rural areas and in small towns, belonging to the council. And all they would need is a lick of paint and perhaps some remedial attention to the central heating. And to use these as a creche or a drop-in centre for unemployed people as well. But there's no initiative. The buildings are locked up, they're boarded up, and I'm sure the council will have very valid reasons why they can't open them. For example, public liability, etc. They'll trot out the old obstacles rather than thinking around the problem. This is a new situation. This is not a situation that's going to resolve itself, and it's not a situation that's going to resolve itself in a short period of time. We need new thinking. and we need to look at all possibilities.
Okay. Right, we're going into a commercial break and we'll join you in a few moments.